Every single time you open up your Instagram, TikTok, or what have you, you might see a drone footage of a decimated city like in Iran, then an ad for a holiday sale, then an image of a parent holding the remains of their deceased child, then a reel of your niece at a pumpkin patch or something cute like that. And this is all on the same timeline, and it's every single time you log on.
Hey, welcome everybody to episode 10 of I'm Not Even Supposed to Be Here Today. Conversational, cultural savvy podcast for folks trying to make sense of a world that has gone sideways. Here to unpack the issues that boggle our minds, all rooted in a little history, a little culture, a little humor, a little group therapy, and a little humility. I am your host, host and co-host, Chris Bevelo, owner of Bearing 287. We're an organization fighting the good fight to make the world a better place for all, and we're the sponsor of the show. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Des, who is the social impact comm strategist by day and spends her nights remixing history to make sense of the present. Welcome, Des.
Serving as Chris's therapist for the day.
Yes, I tried to. Could you tell that was a falsetto intro
So
full of fake happiness?
he's channeling it. He's trying. He's going deep.
I'm trying. I will try, listeners and viewers, to not go into a dark hole in this episode. I'm already there and I'm trying to get myself out of it. Partly for the topic we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk about the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance, which rules my life. What is it? Whether it's bad impacts because it has some really bad effects on folks, and what can we do about it? So we're going to talk about that. But if we talk about that, Des, we have to talk about this shit in the world is causing this. So I spent some time before this episode today digging a little bit more into it, and it just got me depressed and angry and confused and all of the things. So we'll dig into it. But before we get to that, let's at least try to touch on something light. We've got the end of awards season is upon us, and a week from yesterday, as we're recording this on Monday, will be the Oscars. The Academy Awards is the more appropriate title for those. So what's your plan for watching? I assume you're going to watch the Oscars.
Oh no,
You ever
every
not?
single year I'm right there. In the past, in the before times, meaning before COVID, I would throw a party, like an Oscars party, to have folks come over. And it was a lot of fun. But since we've been on the road, we haven't really exactly had community. But it's given us actually more time to take in all of the different films and even some of the short films. So just excited. I think we'll have all the snacks. Again, this is like my Super Bowl. So I'm super pumped and ready. Albeit though, it's St. Patrick's Day, the day before here in Chicago. So I'm not gonna go too hard.
On St. Patrick's Day or the Oscars?
Both. No, just
Okay.
it's Chicago, St. Patrick's.
I feel like that's the place to be. Chicago and New York are the places to be for St.
Yeah.
Patrick's Day.
But I'm not in my 20s anymore, so I don't do all of that. But it'll be cool to see I've never seen a St. Patrick's Day parade, and it'll be cool to see the river dyed green. So excited for that. And plus, my partner is Irish, so
Yes.
it's her community, it's her culture's weekend. So excited.
Very nice. I used to be able to do an Irish accent. And when I had a few in me, I could just go. And it was kind of a mix of Irish and Scottish. I'm not even going to try now. Because it was one of those things that once I got going, it was just like innate and I could do it. But it's been years. And so I'm not going to try. That's as close to Irish
One
as I
day
get.
I will get you full of Irish whiskey and see what happens. For your accent, that is, your accent.
Well, my favorite Irish whiskey, as you are well aware, is Shanky's Whip. You ever had Shanky's Whip?
Never heard of that.
Look at that. Oh, Shanky's Whip is all over the place. It's the thing. It's more like So it's not even close to Jameson, but you will find it in the Irish whiskey aisle because that's what it's labeled. But the way I've described it is it tastes like butter, butterscotch, and caramel. However, it's not cordial level, so it's not, like, super sweet. You're supposed to mix it with Coke and Dr. Pepper, which I find offensive. I just pour it over ice, and that sucker is
Oh,
so smooth and so delicious. And the bottle, like, go find you can go look it up online and look at the bottle. I think the bottle is like an ostrich in a like a race, like a chariot or something. It's just like old school. The bottle shape is old school. The label's old school. It looks like something from 1842, and it is I've got like 4 bottles at home of
oh.
Shakey's Whip. Everybody knows I love it, so they keep giving it to me as
We'll have
gifts.
to check that out. I'll have to get some of that.
You get some for the Oscars. I will have a Shanky's Whip for the Oscars if you have a Shanky's Whip for
Done.
the Oscars.
Done deal.
You should be able to find it in any, like, mid-level liquor store.
Especially in this town, yes.
You might have to drive to Wisconsin, though, if you can't find it in
Jesus.
Chicago, but you'll be able to get it. You just Google Shanky's Whip near me, and I am not responsible for what pops up in those search results. Well, that's great. I'm glad you're doing something fun. Don't think I don't think we have plans for St. Patrick's Day, though we may. So we'll be in Wisconsin with our friends, so maybe we'll do something fun. And for the Oscars, I'm sure we'll just watch them. I mean, there are years where I haven't watched the Oscars, shocker. Um, I don't know why, just because the show used to be so
Yeah,
damn boring. Like, I can't do they've done a better job the last couple of years of shrinking the musical numbers and there's so much cheese. It's too much
too
cheese,
much cheese.
Des. The cheese to excitement ratio is way off. It's like a triple stuffed Oreo cookie. Nobody needs all that
We
stuff in
don't.
there. So, but we'll watch it. We'll watch it. I'm looking forward to it. And I have very strong opinions, which we will save till next week.
Yes.
And I'm going to be very disappointed if I'll be more disappointed if somebody wins or some things win than I will if some things lose. Does that make sense?
Delightfully vague. Let's do it.
I just think like some of the movies and some of the roles, there's a number of options that could win, but there's a couple that I'm like, this better not win. I'll be angry.
I have some
So we'll
guesses,
see.
but let's
Do you,
let's hop into a different dumpster fire.
let's move on. So we can talk about something that's so fun, which is cognitive dissonance, or Um, what was that movie with Mel Brooks? History of World War II or something? I can't remember those movies that have like the subtitle. Or How Do We Go About a Normal Day When the World is a Dumpster Fire? Yes. So there's so many examples this does, and there's different ways to come at it, and we're gonna come at it primarily in one way, which is I'm just gonna share this little story because I think it just captures the kind of cognitive dissonance that just really is causing me pain. So at a high school basketball games, we have really good friends in Wisconsin. Their son is on the high school basketball team. We love to go watch him play whenever we can. And it's a small town. I think it's like 8,000 people. It's just pure Americana. Sometimes the band is in there. It's not like super high level basketball, so it's not super intense, but they're good. And so you're just there with your family and your friends, and you're watching this great, just piece of like life, right? That's what life is about. So we're at this thing. This is I don't remember. It was a couple weeks ago. So halftime comes. The halftime routine is you get up, you stretch. The bleachers aren't great on an old back like mine. Go get some popcorn because the popcorn's like super salty and you got like 15 minutes to kill. So as people are kind of talking and I'm just sitting there eating my popcorn, I open my phone and this must have been a Friday and the headline's like DOG releases another batch of Epstein files, right? And this was in the last few weeks. So it was a significant release that was related to Trump. And I'm just sitting there, this like in my life, Des. I'm just trying to live my life. And here is this, like the power brokers of the world, child pedophile ring that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And we're not doing anything about it. And oh, the second half is going to start. We got to start the second half of the basketball game. And I'm just sitting there just going, I can't, I can't, I can't do this. And so I want to talk about that feeling. I want to talk about why I think we may be in the worst. We're gonna try to do some compare and contrast to other times in American history. Like we're not gonna go back to the 1490s and the Black Plague or whatever, um, Black Death, right? So those were some pretty bad times, but there's components of it now that make it worse, which we'll talk about. Uh, but it when you think about the things that are going on, so the Epstein files is just one. We have climate change that continues to be a real concern moving forward. We have our democratic institutions being assaulted by an authoritarian president. We are in week two of a war with Iran. The economy is in the shitter for most of America. And then we also have AI that's coming for us all, right? Whether it's for your job or just it's going to at some point determine that humans are just not worth the energy and going to push us all into the sea or something, right? And so all this is happening, right? And there's all the layers of it, and we'll talk about some of the layers, but I don't want to get too gross because the layers are deep. We have to live our life. We're trying to live our life, and how do we do that, Des? And so that's what we're going to talk about because this is driving me to
Yeah, and it's like,
distraction.
meanwhile, you're supposed to just have, like, a normal day at work, and for me, it's getting on, like it's the 5,000 Zoom calls you get on, and they all start the same way. We're like, "Hey, how's your day going?" Like, "Fine, and yours?" And it's like, I've stopped responding, I've just been like, and they're like, "Yeah," like, and let's move on. But what used to be this break from all of that, like you have a bunch of meetings, you're like, oh, let me scroll and see some stuff and maybe play a game or whatever, which is supposed to take your mind off of things. You're getting inundated. You're like getting shot with an email. You're getting stabbed with a social media post, a carousel. I mean, you're like, oh God. There's like no way to get away. Like, anyone you walk up to, they're like, oh, did you see? I'm like, I it's kinda why I stopped talking to humans, like, I don't even really engage with people because 'cause I'm like, I know what you're gonna bring up, and I don't feel like talking about it, so but yeah, it's all over the place, but again, meanwhile, supposed to just live a normal day and act as if nothing is happening, so
Well, let's for a second before we get deeper into this, because we want to go back in time a little bit and study this phenomenon. What do you think is worse? Because I used to be where you're at. I used to be in the constant meeting all day long. And I do remember like, okay, so we're just supposed to ignore this happening and just go to work, right? So there's that disconnect where you're just like you just have to physically like you can't even process it because you've got all these things. I'm in a different space now. One of the most beautiful parts of the space I'm in now is I have like 3 meetings a week, Des. I don't have 10 a day anymore. But that also means that I'm more susceptible to be pulling down into this. And also, by the way, I've chosen as my new chapter in life fighting the good fight. So if I fight the good fight, I have to know what the fight is, and I have to keep up with this to some degree. And so I still feel like I'd rather be where I'm at today than where you're at. That's my personal because I think I'd rather have time to process it and give it the time if I want to
yeah.
give it the time. And I think you tell me which role you'd rather be in, where it's back to back meetings, you can't even you see this thing, you're like, okay, I can't even
Well
go there, which is worse or
well, to be
better.
fair, now that I'm not in agency land, my calls aren't as bad. But I too am fighting the good fight, so I do get more, like a breath of fresh air, kinda some steam around, like, okay, like, I feel like I am doing something because my W-2 is a part of doing something. So it's not as bad. Um, but yeah, sure, would I love to be like not that you're retired or anything, but sure, would I love to just, like, have my
No.
day to myself and, like, make art? Like, absolutely. But I will say I am glad that I'm not in agency land. That was tough because you're taking it all in on so many different sides and levels outside of just like what's going on in the world, but like navigating like client stuff and internal stuff and changes and da 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 da. So I'm kind of where you are, except for like I have more hours of my day that I have to do the things. But it does feel at least like, okay, like I'm actually learning more about, solutions and that I'm actively talking to people who are doing things uh against this or to support those who have lost things because of legislation and these rules and I'm like they don't even feel like laws. They're just like these weird rules from like your weird uncle who is, like, on a tirade, but yeah, it feels better than it did about a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think too. Because I think when you've got back-to-back meetings all day long, that's just its own pressure, and that's its own drain. I mean, that is so draining. I know that sounds like, for anybody that works with their hands or does construction work, they're probably like, "Yeah, it must be really tough sitting in front of Zooms." Let me tell you, it is soul sucking. No matter what the meetings are, if you have like 1 half-hour break and you've got meetings back to back all day. Um, and so I think that that actually is worse because you've got that whole level of stress. And then when you do have a break, to your point earlier, you're hit, like you said, stabbed with
Graphic over here.
the carousel of
I
hell.
will say,
Yeah.
when I was at my worst, it was because I was doing DEI work, for a company those years ago, and this was I'll say summer of 2024 when it was becoming very apparent that DEI was like going away, not a thing, but like just sitting there and I'm like, I'm supposed to be talking about this and pushing it forward when everything else out here is saying that we're getting rid of it. And so then it was like this existential dread of like, well, what am I even doing with my life? That was definitely my lowest point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I could get into some low parts, but I'm going to stick to current day, which is low enough. So let's go back in time a little bit because I want to give people, a definition of this and talk about some of this stuff. But I also want to do a fun exercise, Des, which is like, let's go back. I did some research on the worst year in American history, and they're pretty consistent answers. But I want to talk about a few. I think there's a couple that may beat where we're at in some ways, but I think there's differences that make it as bad or worse today. So we're going to talk about that. So first of all, cognitive dissonance. Let's give credit to Leon Festinger. 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 1957. I should have looked up pronunciation. Leon. We'll call him Leon. He wrote a theory of cognitive dissonance, and he defined it as, and we're going to refer to him a couple times in terms of the impact it has and how people avoid it, that kind of thing. When a person holds two or more cognitions that are inconsistent with one another, or when their behavior contradicts their beliefs, they experience a state of psychological discomfort that motivates them to reduce the inconsistency. Okay. So we're going to get to the ways that you reduce the inconsistency, but I think there's kind of two ways to approach this idea of you're holding two beliefs at the same time. And the way I'm going to spend more time on it, and Des, you can go where you want to, is what we kind of alluded to before, when the world is on fire and you're supposed to like play a video game and enjoy it, right? But there's kind of another kind where you hold, it's related, they're similar, but it's where you hold two thoughts in your brain and they don't align and you can't get past them. So I'm going to give you a few that some people will recognize, and I'm sure you'll recognize at least a couple of them. Michael Jackson, maybe one of the greatest musicians of all time, also might be a pedophile, right? A lot of evidence to that. And it always stops me when I see somebody, same with Kobe Bryant, by the way. Kobe Bryant, one of the best basketball players of all time, also not wasn't convicted of, but had to settle on a rape case, right? And you're just like, people celebrate Kobe Bryant and they're okay with the rape part, or they celebrate Michael Jackson and they're just overlooking that. That's kind of this two thoughts in the brain. Another one is AI is undoubtedly the future. Like there's no way around it, but also AI is going to have a lot of really bad things as a result of it being employed. And so it's kind of hard to keep those two things in your brain. And then just one more. This is a shout out to Jeff Spear, our old buddy Jeff Spear. The MVP of the NBA is a guy named Shea Gilgeous Alexander. His team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, won the NBA championship last year. He is clearly one of the best players in the league. That said, he is, for me, one of the worst basketball players to watch because he goes so far out of his way to do what's called foul baiting. So he tries to draw a foul and he gets calls from refs when he's not even touched. He's flailing all
Oh.
over the place. It's just an embarrassment. So, how do you hold this guy who's clearly a good basketball player and doesn't need this? Who still is just like, dude, what are you doing? So those are some examples I have of kind of the more focused kind. Do you have any that stick with you?
Um, I fully agree. Like mine has always been the Michael Jackson one, for sure, because he was my guy. And then I avoided watching that documentary. And then I did one day, and I was like, "Damn, he did that." And
Yeah.
I can't listen to his
Yeah.
music anymore. But I mean, ugh, yeah. Um, I guess for me, I guess I think more about just some of the contradictions that we see in our day-to-day lives. And part of that I think is for me it's that part of like, okay, we've been told if we do this thing that, we will reap this other reward or what have you. But what happens when like the thing that we're told to do is actually like doesn't help or isn't the thing? So, this was actually a really interesting post that I ran across. This is Elsa Mahari of Elsa Loves You, and she just so eloquently captures that yes, but. Have you seen that account? Yes, but it's like imagery. It's like cartoons. It'll
No, is it
well,
on where is it
yeah,
at?
it's on
Instagram
Instagram.
or
I know you're
something?
not on there. um,
No, it's all right. Maybe there's
I
somewhere else. I'll go
love
find
those.
them.
I love when they come up because it's like, yes, but and so anyway, she pulled together a bunch of these and I was like, yes, every single scroll I was like, yes, yes, yes. So it essentially it starts off as simple as, oh, like eat healthy and you'll last longer, live longer. Well, I'm like, well, all of our food is poison. All of our food is fake. That's been the biggest piece for me for the last couple of years is that "Oh, I'm gonna like I've changed up my diet. I'm gonna eat clean. I'm gonna eat this and I'm gonna eat organic." But I'm like, but that's just like a label. That's literally just like branding or marketing. I learned through the years. I remember fair trade coffee when it's like, no, that was just marketing.
Yeah.
And then you get into and some friends of mine have been talking about this, like, you recycle, be sustainable, do your part. But meanwhile, the polluters, the people that are dropping all the oil in our water, who are doing the fast fashions, they're ruining the planet. Trust the institutions. The institutions are completely failing us right now. To your point, that job security of AI, where I'm coming from a marketing world where they're so bullish on AI, like gotta get in here, gotta learn AI, da 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 da. And then I go into more of a, nonprofit world, and it's very much like, no, we're not touching any of that. But then also that threat, like you're saying, of like the robots are gonna just like take us over. And then, of course, the big piece of all of this is like, it's about that color that's the most important. It's green, right? And that in a way, I was alive, like I was a kid in the 80s, but I don't know what was like really going on as far as like the extreme like wealth and like Wall Street, like bros and all that. But like we are living in a time of the most extreme abundance. We have people who are going to maybe become trillionaires who could never spend that amount of money in their lifetimes. Like even if they spend like $1 billion a day, like they could never get through that. But they're hungry for more. They want all of that, and like, oh, you want $20 an hour for you, we can't do it. You can't do it, my guy? And so it's all of that, but what really just hits the hardest is that idea of, you know, try to live a nice, stable life. I'm like, well, there is instability every single place you look, just like you'd mentioned. And it's like, so how are we supposed to like navigate all these things? So me, it's more of that like concrete yes, but no, that we have to navigate. And again, it starts in for me, I'm like, it always just starts in the grocery store. And I'm like, well, where do I even go to shop? Because you can't even really go to Whole Foods anymore because even that's not like as organic as it used to be. So that's kind of where my brain goes when I think about all of this.
Well, and you can take those contradictions even deeper because and this is probably coming from a place of privilege. Uh, but the things that certainly I grew up with, and I won't say into my 20s or 30s, there were just like known knowns about how the world works and who this country is. I've been completely obliterated for me. But some of that is just because I was privileged and sheltered and all that kind of stuff. But some of it is also due to the times, right? We're supposed to be a nation of laws. What the fuck happened to that? Excuse me. Like this is
Mhm.
where I just get so angry. Like the bad guys keep getting away with bad
Mhm.
shit over and over and over. We used to be at least you could look at the federal government and go, there's, one thing that made us different from other governments in the world was there was not corruption. Was there corruption? Probably, of course there was. But you know what? It was so bad that they tried to keep it hidden. Now it's just
Mm.
everywhere. It is everywhere, right? So that's another example. It just the things that you feel like kept you tethered to reality or hope for the future, or all those tethers are just getting snapped in front of me at least. They may not be surprises for other people, but the degree to which we just have I mean, the other thing I'll say is like censorship. Like the degree of censorship and bias from our corporate media in this country is insane. It's really, really insane. And so all of these things, have been
Mhm.
stripped away, at least for me, and they're contradictions to what I believed, and they're contradictions to what I think are important, and they lend to this bigger compounded effect we'll talk about of cognitive dissonance, because you see this stuff in the news and you just wanna scream. You just wanna go, "Are we gonna do anything?" We most of like I'm sure it's not confirmed, so don't hold this against me, but we very, 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 very likely bombed an elementary school in Iran on day 1 and killed 168 girls. Wait, is anything gonna happen? Is anything gonna happen with the Epstein files? Like, is anything gonna happen with this stuff? So, yeah, that lends to it all, for me, and then, like, "Oh, let's go have dinner with our friends." I mean, well, you know what I mean? It's just like, how can I go enjoy dinner with my friends when we are skirting with World War III, AI is coming to take our jobs and everything else? Like, it's just I don't know. We're gonna give ourselves permission to do that, so just hang in there if you're walking out on a ledge right now. I suppose you can't say that anymore. We're gonna get through the bad stuff to get to some ways to solve this, but those are the contradictions I think that lend to this as well,
I will
does.
say from my not so privileged background, as a black queer woman, I guess in a way, kind of welcome. Welcome to like the shit's insane and like yeah, it is. It kind of reminds me of you remember the SNL skit when after the first Trump election, 2016, where it was like Dave Chappelle
Oh, so
and that but
good.
to me, that sums it up, where, like, these are the things that, like, Black people, especially in America, like, we're like, "Yeah, yeah, of course," which I get it,
Well, of course you won Kentucky. That's where all the
Yeah.
racists are. That's the line I remember.
And so it's I guess that's the part that kind of there there's this term that gets thrown around. It's like, "Oh, you're resilient." It's like, "Black people are so resilient, yada, yada, yada." It's like,
Mhm.
there is resilience, but it's also just kind of like, this is our existence, and, like, we wouldn't exist, like, we would unalive ourselves if, like, we had to, like, just sit and, like, think and live, but we have to keep moving on. And I think that's the part that is actually kind of helpful during these moments especially, is that I have that already kind of baked into my, like, bones of, yeah, and then, like, yes, that's a thing, that's something we're gonna have to fight, and we will, but that it's not gonna stop us from having joy. Just like you saw, what was it, last summer where it was, boots on the ground? Where it was all, well, your algorithm may not have shown you this, but it's I wa I was inundated with videos of, like, the world is, like, falling apart and, like, Black people are learning a new line dance, like, 'cause, like, what are we supposed to do? Um, 'Cause, yeah, like, so there's always gonna be essentially this sense of we're gonna find some joy, we're gonna find a little bit of humor, well, a lot of bit of humor, that's another, like, coping mechanism of us as well. But this is actually something interesting, with Irish folks, that's kind of a way that they handle things as well, is, like, the humor, the dark humor around it. So yeah, yeah. Welcome.
It's fair. It's totally fair. Um, but let's use our friend history because a little bit of what you're talking about is like lived experience and history showing us that hey, this isn't new, and it's not new. Think for many of us, I don't know. We're gonna look at some years and we're gonna see whether this is actually the worst year. I mean, it's not a clear cut case, right? So these are the years I found, and maybe you've got other ones. It's hard to pinpoint a year sometimes, right? So, like the first one that came up often was 1862. Obviously, the Civil War, the whole period of the Civil War, and I'm reading something about the lead up to the Civil War right now, is obviously a horrific period. But if we have to pick a year, a lot of folks focused on 1862. It was the Battle of Antietam. 4,600 people killed, 23,000 wounded in a day. So that's pretty awful when you consider those are all Americans. And if we're talking about, again, we're just going to stick with the US history because if we had to go broader, there'd be a lot of other things that would certainly match this, no doubt, right? So we're going to stick with that. That's a pretty bad year. I don't know if you have any comments on that one. Or we should. Do you want to comment as we go through? I've got five of them to compare to this
You can
year.
go ahead and go through all of them, but, like,
Go through
I
them. Okay.
guarantee that I'm like, I I don't know that that's, like, well, it's worse, but go through all of them.
Okay. Okay. Second one is 1919. This is also a tough one because 1918 was when the Spanish flu started. But in 1919, you had the Spanish flu, you had race and labor riots, unrest was called the Red Summer. So that was a pretty awful year. 1939 is pretty bad. I'm putting this right up there. This has got to be in the second tier, if not the first. Hitler invades Poland, starts World War II. Of course, the United States doesn't join it then, but from a global perspective, and we're at the last year of the Great Depression. So it's not the worst year of the Great Depression. The Great Depression lasted for quite a long time, 10 years. But that's a
Mm,
pretty bad year, right? Relatively speaking, knowing what's coming after World War II. 1968, we talked about this 2 episodes ago, I think. War in Vietnam, assassination of MLK Jr., assassination of RFK, and election of Richard Nixon. That's a milestone year that most people point to as maybe one of the worst. And then we have our old friend 2020. That's only 6 years
mhm,
ago. 6 years ago. But you have the COVID pandemic, which in many ways was worse than the Spanish flu pandemic. You had the shutdown of our economy And not just the shutdown, but steps were taken during that year, right or wrong, that we're still dealing with today in terms of inflation, work from the office, work from home, all kinds of stuff like that. And then, of course, you have the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis and the racial reckoning that followed. So those are the five that came up the most. Does you have another year you want to throw in there, or do you just want to look at those five and see if any of those? Oh, by the way, I forgot in 2020, we had a presidential election, and that did not go smoothly, thanks to our guy, Donald, who disputed the outcome, still disputes the outcome today, was still talking about it. And of course, that led to January 6th. So that's 2021. So we can't officially count that in
Yeah.
2020. That's what I
So
got, Des.
essentially, is your stance that this year, this current year, is worse than all of those?
So I think this year is worse than all of those if you have to pick a year. Yes, I would say somebody could argue 1939 and I would hear it. Someone would argue 1968 and I would hear it. In 2020, I would hear all three of those. The stuff that we've talked about, right? We've got an authoritarian president who's killing citizens, who's created his own Gestapo, like that word or not, it feels true, who's threatened national elections. You've got the Epstein files, which I don't think we can actually grapple with as a society. We just don't seem to be able to really acknowledge that's happening. We have the threat of AI, which is becoming real. We have economy that's really in trouble. Healthcare is in the shitter. A war in Iran, a war in Venezuela, and threats to our own European. And the twist here, Des, and then I'll shut up and let you go, is that it's March.
March.
It's March.
Yeah.
The other ones are like the whole year. It's not even the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
No, that so I'm saying this has the potential to be worse than all of those, yes. What do you
I
think?
think perhaps from your perspective as a white hetero male living today, I could see where you would feel that. But again, putting my uh diversity quota hat on, and I'm looking at 1862 and I'm thinking, well, I would have been a slave, and all of my fellow slaves or family would have been shipped
Yes?
off to go fight a war to defend us remaining slaves. All right. Let's get to 1919. The race and labor riots. For me, I'm thinking about the lives lost. Like I'm assuming this is more of that time period of where the train, the railroads are being built. Where there was like just insanity amount of people who were just kind of killed, and you had to like do all these things by hand. Like I don't know that I would have wanted to do any of that. Um, and then I am looking at 1939. I'm trying to remember when the prohibition, that was was that earlier than 1990,
Earlier.
was that 1920s?
Mm, I can't remember when it started, but it was done in the early
Okay.
30s.
But imagine a world where like shit is so wild, people are so drunk that like your families are being left destitute because you just can't get yourself out of the bottle, that they had to pass legislation to say like no more, no mas. Like I don't know that we're at that level per se. Like I don't even understand.
Do you think it's different now? I think it's the same. It's just we've acclimated to alcohol and people are okay with families being decimated.
Honey, the way that like whole families were abused and left to like fend for themselves and starve.
But that's happening. That happens today. Like, I know more people that have families that have been devastated by alcohol than I do of
I
cancer.
do have cancer, but did it get to a level where they have we gotten to a level again where we had to make legislation? In fact, we're like pulling back legislation, like, oh, I sure take psychedelics and what have you. So I'm just putting that perspective.
Great. Okay, that's fine,
Um,
that's fine, that's fine, we can keep
World
going.
War II, whole swaths of people being killed for what if you aren't Aryan remotely, you're dead. Like, forget about it. Granted, I'm thinking also just the Civil War. That was the last time that war actually happened on our soil. outside of 9/11, of course, the Twin Towers and the Pentagon were hit by planes, we haven't had that kind of level of what we're seeing in Iran and what we've been seeing in the Middle East, which we shouldn't actually be calling it the Middle East because that's like colonialism stuff. That I just learned that too, and I was like, oh my god, of course, because it's compared to like where England sits, the Middle East is where it sits on the other side of where Asia, the Asian countries are. But whatever.
We gotta pick our
I'm
battles,
just
Des.
okay.
We gotta
I
pick our
I'm
battles.
I'm looking 1968 was, like, super weird, and it to me, that feels, like, as chaotic as today, but again, our leaders aren't
Yes.
being assassinated, like, every other day like it was in 1960. That was cr in the '60s. I'll back up to JFK. But, like, that's insane. We don't know that. We've been seeing other leaders in other countries assassinated, but we haven't seen any of our leaders assassinated, and this doesn't even list all the civil rights.
Oh, you mean like I mean, we had assassinations in Minnesota of
Were they
legislators.
on the same level at were
You
they on the same
had
level? That's
Oh, no. No,
people are
no, 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 no,
murdered
no. No,
people are
that's your point. I get
murdered
it, I
all
get
the
it.
time, but, like, as
Yes.
the assassinations hit differently, I imagine.
Totally. Totally. Those 3 were like the death of hope. Between JFK, MLK, and RFK, that was like
And
the
to
end of
me
hope. I
and
think
I
that's a
think
fair
about, like,
statement.
where would we be as a society had those assassinations not occurred? We wouldn't be here today. I mean, one would hope. But so those are the kinds of things I think about. 2020 was a wild year, but there's also like a lot of stuff happened, but like a lot of people died from COVID, much like in the Spanish flu, and like the Dow went down, but like shot back up and it's like way higher than it even was back then. So it's all kind of relative. Like it chaotic? Yes. But what I think is different now is the conditions that we're under. We weren't inundated with this information every single second of every single day the way that we are today. Because like back then at those stage points, you got your news, especially earlier on, that was through a newspaper. It took a couple of days to even get to you. And then in the '60s, you're all sitting down to the nightly news. And again, you're all collectively kind of taking this in together. But like you and I right now, because there's so many different insane algorithms, like you might be seeing like some stuff that we're both seeing like an insane amount of stuff, but you're even seeing a whole nother, like, level of different stuff than I'm over here, and I'm like, if we were to compare notes, it'd be like, "Oh, Jesus." So I think that's the difference is that they didn't have these little
Yes.
devices in their hands or TV sets with 24-hour news all day long where you're just getting all day long with it. I think that's the difference, and that feels worse because of, like, from an emotional standpoint, we're having to carry so much all the time. Whereas there, it's like surviving, trying to pay these bills, and then like, okay, yeah, these other things are happening. But with us, it's like it's more, I guess, emotional. And that takes like a whole nother toll that like we're 30 years from now, we're gonna be watching some documentary being like, Jesus Christ. So I think that's if it hurts more than it might have in that way, then just because it's constant and we can't even get away from it. You have to go like hole up in a shack on the woods with no electricity, no cell service in order to just get a break. So that's my take.
Well, you've got a little scenario, and I don't wanna take it from you because it's so well done. Your 30 seconds of opening Instagram, would you share that? Because it is it is brutally reflective of what we're talking about, and it's 1,000% true. Because everybody open their Instagram or your TikTok right now and see if you can replicate this. Go. Please
So
share it.
basically, within just every single time you open up your Instagram, TikTok, or what have you, you might see a drone footage of a decimated city like in Iran, then an ad for a holiday sale, then an image of a parent holding the remains of their deceased child, then a reel of your niece at a pumpkin patch or something cute like that. And this is all at the same timeline, and it's every single time you log on. Like maybe you can like unfollow some stuff, but the way the algorithm it just sends it to you. So yeah, How are you supposed to process all of 4 of those things? And that was just like I said, 30 seconds. And that adds up, especially since we're spending like, I don't know, some people are spending like 8 hours a day on their phone, but that's not me or anything. But yeah, like how are we supposed to like our organs? How do they even survive that? The anxiety, the levels of like our heart, like, uh. So yeah,
What you just described is 1,000% real and also a Black Mirror episode. I mean, I don't know if it's really a Black Mirror episode, but you can just imagine a Black Mirror episode where somebody's just flipping through, or somehow it's probably not even on a phone. It's like a hologram in front of their face, right? And it's like sale at Penny's and 60,000 die in nuclear explosion. And oh, there's your cat like playing with a mouse. And then, oh, look at that. We're all going to die from the new G43 flu, whatever. Um, and we're just, it's all fine. It's just all the real. It's just the real, and it makes it to your point earlier, right? That was the thing I was gonna say about the other years, where you could look at the Civil War, and that was devastating. It's hard to probably equate anything to the Civil War, okay? Because that, like, the whole country was involved in that, and so many people died. But a lot of the other ones, to your point, are sequential, they're one-time things. This shit is layered. And they keep adding to it, and some of it is intentional, right? Um, and I think that that's like I tried to pull together, and you've already hit on one of this, but why does this feel so bad now? You just gave your point of view, and I think the 3 points I have are very much overlapping. First of all, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the list of shit that we're dealing with starts and ends with Donald Trump. I really don't. Now, that doesn't mean that some of the stuff we're dealing with, like Trump didn't, Trump's, he didn't deal with COVID wasn't Trump's fault, but he sure handled it shittily. I think that's fair. Remember the line where he said, like, look, the problem is we're testing people. That's why our numbers are so high. If we didn't test people, there wouldn't be as many people with COVID. Like this is the president of the United States saying this shit, right? So there's a through line with Trump, and part of Trump is not just his chaos and his transactional nature and his lust for power and money, but the strategy. And I think we've talked about this before. The Steve Bannon popularized of flooding the zone with shit. So that's intentional. They're trying to bury us in this shit, and it's working. So that's one. The second is what I would call the rage economy, which you talked about the algorithms. The algorithms make more money the angrier we are because they know that fear and anger are the best way to hook people. Then they can, Scott Galloway, again, like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Scott, he makes a really good point about this. Like they suck you in with something that's just rage baiting, and then they sell you like on the new Lexus holiday sales event, right? That is intentional. That is intentional. They're driving us to be more scared and more angry because that pulls us back in. So that is number two. And then three is technology, what I call the technological dystopia. You've already kind of talked about social media, but it's also cable news. We've talked about that in the past, 24 hours a day. They're always on there, right? CNN might as well just be called breaking news because every single minute of the day is breaking news for CNN, right? Our phones are addictive devices. They're addictive. They might as well be crack or gambling or video games. They're addictive. And then, of course, our friend AI. I'm sure AI will solve all of this. AI is not going to make this any worse, Des. So I think maybe that's the solution, right? So you got all those three things that are lending to what we're feeling in this next level of cognitive dissonance. Does that all line up with kind of where you're thinking
it
too?
does. But then I think back, like, and it's a part of the 3, but I think back of, like, what has made all of this possible, and that it's essentially these things that originally started out as good, as ways for us to connect, ways for us to keep in touch, and that's that social media. And that when you learn what humans are gonna do and human psychology kind of takes over, and that it goes down this negative spiral, like, essentially, Trump has been Trump has been a fixture my entire life. which is insane. Like, would I have ever thought that he'd become president? Like, no, because he was just like this dude. But like, he's been a fixture, but he's been able to find himself, put himself within the media conversation, like at every stage. But now it's gotten to this insane level with social media devices or what have you. But I would add in, and you kind of you talked about this, but essentially, these folks that own these companies that are honestly like they have the most to gain from Trump doing all of this stuff because no one's looking at what they're doing, the Peter Thiels, the whole conversation between like, "Oh, is Claude gonna give access to the government in order to, like, bomb people?" Like,
Right.
"Oh, luckily they, stuck to their values and morals and, like, pulled out of that," but, like, OpenAI was like, "Don't mind if I do." And then now he's getting back like, "Oh," but it's like, when are we gonna step up to these guys that are basically, like, pumping him up to be able to do these things? Like, all of them, to me, have the
Yeah.
most amount of blood on their hands because they have the power to stop it, but they won't because greedy MFers. That's that's my
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. If in a technological dystopia, you could throw in the tech overlords as part of that. That's 100% right. Okay, so really quickly, because I don't want to dwell on this, but this cognitive dissonance we feel, it has real implications, right? So there's a lot of research that shows it's not just a mental thing, it's emotional, it's physical, chronic stress and anxiety, feelings of guilt, shame, and inadequacy, decision paralysis. We're going to talk about a little bit of how people kind of deal with this in a bad way. You can strain your relationships, doom scrolling, addictions, all the things we're talking about. Right? So when people face this, according to Leon, our friend who really kind of came up with this concept back in the 50s, there's three ways primarily that they deal with it. And the first one is the one that probably rings the most true, which is avoidance. So you have these things just like beating you about the brain, and you're like, I just can't anymore. I just can't. I'm this the example that I came up with um, was, you know, why someone who knows climate change is real might avoid watching documentaries about it. So I don't remember if I shared this, but this exact same thing happened to me when my wife wanted to watch the Alabama Solution, which is about the horrific conditions and essentially, you know, current day slavery of the prison system in Alabama. And I knew, I'm like, I don't want to watch it. It's just going to make me mad. I know what it's going to say. And I would have avoided it had she not pushed me to say, hey, it's important that we watch this. And we watched it and it made me angry, but I learned things and there was some hope in it. So that's a real thing. That's a real thing.
Yeah, another version of that was around all of the food documentaries. Like, remember, like Food Inc. and Super Size Me, and like all of this. Like, there's a couple of them that I'm like, I can't because like I really need those McDonald's fries. And yeah, there's so many of those things where it's like I'm not because I know and I know I should be doing this or da 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 da, but like I don't want to be made to feel guilty in that regard. Um, but then the flip side of that though is that, yeah, the avoidance is real, but like, some of us have to live these atrocities like each and every single day. So it's not anything that we can necessarily avoid. But that's like and that's kind of the rub of this. Like if the two things can be true where I'm like, I'm avoiding these food documentaries, but meanwhile, like I'm living some of these other things. But to Diana, our guest on the podcast last week was talking about, it's like at some point you still have to like curve in order to keep going.
Yeah.
And so in some ways avoidance can be therapy, but there's also the flip side of that of people just like not doing anything or not caring or feeling like they so what are your others?
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a little bit on how to moderate that. So the second one is delegitimizing. So again, these are the three things that are put out by Leon, whatever his last name was that I already forgot, who invented cognitive dissonance or discovered it or whatever we call it. So delegitimizing, people undermine the source of the dissonant information. They may discredit scientists, dismiss journalists, or label whistleblowers as biased. This is a particularly corrosive form of dissonance because it doesn't just protect the individual, it actively degrades the information ecosystem for everyone. Hello. I mean, is it okay for me to call out MAGA on this one? Because these people will not, and they're not, by the way, they're not the only ones, but they seem to be the most egregious right now. I think any human is subject to this, right? When you have something that you believe in, and somebody presents something that you just that's in contrast or conflict with that, uh, you delegitimize it in whatever way you can, right? Somebody can show you the data that proves that you're wrong, and you're going to double down because that's how we are. Uh, but the degree to which MAGA has to do this, right? So we're going to elect Donald Trump because he's not going to start any new wars. And now he started two wars and they're still defending him, right? Like, they must be they must be suffering a level of cognitive dissonance um, that is unreal because they are faced with these contradictions, the hypocrisies that are next level, and they still have to fight because now their political view is who they are, and so these things are kind of gnawing at who they are as a human, and that's a really tough place to
We
be.
s That's
That's
definitely
fair.
fair. We saw more of the rise of this during COVID, of like the do your own research of everything. But I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm doing my own research, but I'm also watching loved ones die. But oh, sure, yeah, like I'm not gonna trust anything. But yeah, it's very much real.
And the third one is limiting impact, and I have definitely seen this from people I know. People minimize the significance of the contradiction. One person can't make a difference, or it's not as bad as it looks, or there's other worse things, and it's kind of just like a poo pooing of it, of just saying like, it's almost like the way I think about it is there are people that you want to be next to in the exit row when your plane crashes. They're the people that are, like, clear-eyed, and they see the danger, and they react to it, and they follow the instructions, they help people get out. The person you don't wanna be next to is the person who's just like, "Ah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just you know what? It's gonna be fine. We'll have a safe landing." And, "Oh, no, that's not fire. That's not fire that's all around us. That's just, it's gonna be fi," and they just get frozen, kind of. Um, and that's a very dangerous place for people to be too, because they're not really dealing with the cognitive dissonance. They're just trying to manage and get past it, but it's not going away. And the fire in the burning cabin of the crashed plane is not going to get better. And if you're not careful, you're going to get singed. So that's
It's
the
almost
third
like you're
one.
gaslighting us. Like, when you were talking about that, it feels like, "Oh, that sounds like gaslighting." Like, "Oh, that's not real," or "You're being too sensitive," and it's like, "But are you not seeing this?" But don't let, like, the level of people just kind of, like, not really actually thinking about things in that way, like, don't sleep on that. More people than we would hope don't put 2 and 2 together in that way. They're just like, "Oh, I'm just living my life. That thing is happening over there to those people, but, like, it's not that bad." Well, because it's not
Right.
happening to you, so, yeah, sure, but
So I'm gonna close here with the cherry on top from our friend who is, I should come up with his name. What's his name, Des? Kidding. Now I don't even remember his first name.
Leon,
That's how bad. Leon Festinger. Leon Festinger. Okay. So the cherry on top of this is that all of this can be cumulative. And he calls it the magnitude effect. So when you have multiple examples of this, and we've already given what all those would be, when you stack them together, Leon says the magnitude of dissonance becomes almost unbearable, which is precisely why so many people shut down, tune out, or retreat into comfortable narratives. And I saw this amazing TikTok of this guy who said, if you talk about what's going on in the world to somebody, you sound insane. You sound insane. Hey, what are we doing in Iran? We just bombed a school, and And what are the goals? And like, are we, like, and also like, if you try to talk to somebody about all this stuff, you sound
Mhm.
insane because there's so much of it. And it's just like, how in the world are we going to deal with all of this stuff? Right. And so that magnitude effect is something else. That to me is what really gets to me. And I listened to this podcast. It was a phenomenal podcast. And of course, I've forgotten the name of that too. It's late in the day, everybody. So I'm going to give my old brain an excuse here. But while I ramble, I'm going to come up with the name of it, the Project
Mm.
Censored Show. And I'm reading a book from Project Censored, which is phenomenal. It's about the state of media in 2025, which I'm going to talk more about in a different episode. But I listened to this podcast and they're connecting all these dots, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't take it. And that was right before I got off the plane and encountered rude behavior and showed up crabby for this
What a day.
podcast.
The risk is like
Mhm.
you I find myself I'm like, God, I don't wanna sound alarmist, but it's uh and so to me, like those folks that are saying like, "Oh, like it's not that bad," or like, "Oh, like like what can I do?" or like, "What's next?" It's like, okay, you realize that that is essentially a luxury for you. That there are those of us that are out here just trying to survive.
Yes.
And that essentially you're subscribing to, that great American brand pillar of the rugged individualist, pull yourself up by your own bootstrap, figure it out, you don't need anybody. And that it worked for a while, but what if it stops working? And I feel like this is the closest we're getting to where I'm like, you know what? This may not actually like pan out. Because as we're thinking about like what makes me feel like I got a tin hat on is that idea. I'm like, okay, if you're looking at this, the potential is that these technocrats, these robots that they're building, these algorithms, they're gonna take us over because as you're looking at the job loss and all that, like, well, what function will humans have in the future? And then in a way, that's where your identity and because if you are not one of these tech overlords, then you are nothing. You are an easily led automaton, and that we will essentially potentially become like as a whole, as a human race, the marginalized groups. And then what? Who's going to be there for you when you never showed up for the other folks? We're not coming to save you. There is no safety net. That's the real rub of this, and that's what really feels freaking scary now is that like it's not just we're dealing with this human strife and then eventually somebody will, step up and values and all that. These robots ain't got values. These tech leaders feel like they don't have values. They do not care other than cuz I think about this too. I'm like, okay, if I don't have a job, I don't have an income, how am I going to buy your stuff and put money in your pocket? So why would you make all of these choices that ultimately can hurt you? But I think the biggest piece of that is that America is still a very young country. We haven't been through the things that these other continents have. And my partner and I, we were talking about essentially, she was like, look up Iranian women in the 1970s. I was like, what? What do you mean? You look it up. Pictures of women in swimsuits at the beach, living their best
Mhm.
lives, and then you cut to the '80s, that's when you start to see the hijabs and the whole and, like, that's what the country is today and what we know as Muslim countries. But the reality of the fact that, wait, th they haven't always been this? This isn't just their culture? That, oh, this is from a regime coming in and taking over? And then you think about The Handmaid's Tale and that was a written during that time period basically as an allegory for what could happen to the US. And hello, we're here. What? But again, feel like I have a damn tin hat on
Funny.
when you say it out loud. Help. We have to stop this. We can't just sit back and idly watch this like do because it's happening is what it feels like. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's happening. Okay. But that was hard to get through, but very helpful, at least for me to talk through it and get some historical context. But what do we do about this? So let's go through. I've got 5 things, Des, And you can just weigh in on each one. This was some research I did from my friend Claude, who helped pull together research. So here I am. If you can't beat him, join him, Des. I'm just going to use Claude till he replaces me, and then I don't have a job anymore. All right. So the first step, there was more than five, but these are the five I thought were most important. We're doing it right now, which is acknowledging the dissonance. And by the way, all these things are backed up. Like this one, Claude and his infinite wisdom found some research from psychologist Kaya Rai Prewitt of the Cleveland Clinic that says, and I love this part, what you feel, the discomfort, it is a signal. It's not a malfunction. It means you're paying attention. It means your values are strong, and there's this conflict, and you're getting a signal about this conflict. Just acknowledging that you're dealing with it is honest. It's authentic, and as always, the 50% of solving a problem is admitting that you have one. So start with that. I think we've done a good job of of that today.
I do,
Do you
because, like,
think?
these thoughts just sit in our heads all day long, but being able to be like, "Okay, do you see this?" Like, "Yes." "You see that? Are you thinking this?" "Yes." Like, it helps. It's the same thing as, like, just how crying actually makes you feel better because you released it. You at least named it and released it, and, like, that's the first step to recovery from whatever this is.
So the second one is I kept the title because I love this pure AI title. Practice structured information consumption,
What?
which is another way of saying like tune the F out. So we talked a little bit ago about how if you care, if you have values and you care about this world and you want to make it a better place, you can't tune completely out. You can't walk away from it all. You can't um, just kind of gaslight yourself and be like, whistle past the graveyard. So you can't do that. But you also can't bury yourself in it. You can't doom scroll all day long. You can't do what I did, which was, the plane landed and we took a hot second to like get to the gate. So here I am, just like scrolling. So you've got to prioritize. And the research that was quoted here, a Norwegian psychologist whose name is Per Espen Stoknes. I'm going to assume that's a person,
Fake name.
Des. Um, so talking about client communication, because climate communication, climate change is a perfect example of like you can't just ignore it, but if you really study it, you're gonna like go cry in a corner. Um, the idea here is making the problem feel proximate, so close to you, social, so share it with others, and actionable. What can you do about it? The other thing I'm going to just suggest here, and I am not a paid sponsor of this. We are not a paid sponsor of the brick. The brick has been a lifesaver for me. Brick is a little piece of technology that allows you to literally brick your phone in whatever way you want. I brick my phone from 7 in the morning to 6 p.m. with a no doom scrolling brick, which means I can't access social media. I can't access any of the news channels. I really can't access pretty much any kind of information on my phone. I still get emails that I subscribe to. So if something big happens, I'm going to see it there. And even if I want to read those are an email. So it's limited, right? All the other things
Yeah.
suck you in. Once you're sucked in, you get that addiction node going and you can't break out of it. So I would recommend the brick for that.
Yeah, for me, it's
Are you practicing structured information consumption?
am. I don't like some years ago, I stopped watching the news. The only news I really get is the First Up by NPR, just kind of like, hey, what happened? All right. And so that I can know what other people are talking about, but like nothing else. The other piece was like podcasts. Podcast file, love them, but you can't listen to it anymore. Like, I'm like, I'm going back to music. Like, I'm just going to have a nice, relaxing night by the fire and listen to some music and just enjoy and be grateful for what rights I still have. And yeah, so that's how I'm practicing.
I just have to throw this in here because I went back to the pivot. I should have known better. And it was Kara and Scott talking about the Iran war. And I swear to God, Scott Galloway must have said at least 4 times how much he believed in he called it the asymmetrical upside He kept saying that. And I'm like, dude, what are you even? Because he thinks it's a great idea. He thinks it's a great idea, and he's so impressed that we took out the Ayatollah in a strike, and people don't realize how amazing that is, and there's a once in a lifetime opportunity here for us to create a society in Iran that goes back to what you were talking about in the '70s, where it's a progressive democratic nation that's full of oil and is our friend. And he honestly believes that's the possibility here. Well, we're already, I don't even know when that was recorded. They've already named the guy's son. He's more of a hardliner. Like, I just was screaming at my phone. So I need to take your advice and stop with those podcasts. All right. Number 3, adopt the smallest viable action. I love this. Uh, People get overwhelmed. There's kind of like this idea, if you can't fix it, then why bother? What can I do? I'm just one person. You hear that from people that don't vote sometimes, right? Like, what's my vote's not going to matter. But actually, pick small things, right? So examples here are call your representative, give a donation, talk to a friend, change a purchasing habit. It sounds like we've done all of these in our podcast, which is just the 10th episode, by the way. So kudos to us. And we even talked last week about join a protest if you want to, or if that's not your gig, volunteer to bring food to a family or donate money or all those things. The point is that you're doing something, because if everybody does something, it's going to make a difference. If you think you have to do all of the thing or solve the thing, you're going to get frozen.
Yeah, for me, it's been the mutual aid. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna take care of the people in my life. And, whatever they're struggling with, like, how can I help them with that? And I'm sure your wife talks about this as well, but like, as a therapist, they're doing leaps and bounds. Like, I don't need to go to protest because like I'm doing all of this work every single day, which has this, ripple effect. So it's like these all of these things do have a ripple effect. And so yeah, pick your lane and just do that one little simple thing, whether it's a protest, mutual aid, taking care of your people, or calling a representative.
Yep. Yep. Okay. The last two make me feel so happy because they feel like permission. So number 4 is compartmentalize strategically, not destructively. So the point here is it's fine to say, I'm going to be fully present at this high school basketball game right now. And while the world is on fire, that's important. But for this 2 hours, I am going to focus on what's in front of me, and I'm not going to let that in. That's not denial, right? We're not suggesting you deny all the things. Again, you can't be on that side of the spectrum, and you don't want to compartmentalize in a way that is not your choice. So the idea is that you're deciding, I'm going to focus on this now, and that's okay. And that's completely, completely acceptable. Not only acceptable, it's what you have to do to keep going. Because if you don't do that, the cognitive dissonance is going to eat away at you in the way he was talking about
And in a
before.
way, it kind of empowers you to keep going. Like I don't have kids or anything like that, but if I had like nieces and nephews, going to see them in their game is like, this is why I'm doing this. To see them thrive, to like I just seeing them that their future is so bright ahead of them. I want to make sure that I'm protecting that so that they get to experience like, joys and what have you. And all of us not perish, but I love that.
Okay, so the fifth one, you need to check me on this to make sure this isn't AI being a suck up, because AI can be a suck up. Again, AI pulled these together. Our friend Claude pulled these together. Um, but I'm going to take it, right? And number 5 is find joy as an act of resistance. I'm just going to read this because I think it's great. This may be the most counterintuitive strategy, but it's also the most essential. In an era defined by compounding crises, of which we've listed all of them, the experience of joy in relationships, nature, art, community, everyday moments is not a betrayal of the world's suffering. It's what makes sustained engagement possible. Burnout is the number one killer of activism and awareness. The people who remain engaged with the world's problems over decades, and that's a pretty important key, over decades, are almost universally people who have found ways to replenish themselves. Living your life fully is not a form of denial. It's the foundation upon which meaningful action is built. Thank God, unless you're gonna tell me that's a bunch of shit.
No, because I mean, that's exactly what we talked about last week with Diana, is that we have to do these things. So, like, go outside, go for a walk, go touch grass, go to that art museum. There's a book that I've been so appreciating, it's The Art of Noticing, where it has all of these different things, like, on your daily walk, like, even though it's the same route, you have the opportunity to discover something different every single time. Like, for example, they're like, "Okay, keep an eye out for the color yellow." On your walk, pay attention to what sounds you hear, different parts of your walk, and it's in at its core, it's essentially telling you to be present, to have gratitude for, like, the beauty that it does exist in the world that makes all of this worth it, and why we do continue to fight because we don't want to lose that. So absolutely. And like I was saying about, like, us as, Black folks, like, we're always gonna find the joy. We're always gonna find something because what else is there? Like, we can't just sit in, fight. Like, we have to find that reason why we keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you talked about it, but I would explicitly throw the word curiosity in what you just described, right? Curiosity is an amazing magical power. If you can find a way to explicitly apply curiosity, it just you see the wonder in the world, you see the beauty in the world. It also allows you to handle a lot of the antagonistic things that you encounter differently. Like, so instead of me squaring off against the guy on the when he tried to cut in front of me in the airplane aisle, which I did. And I stood up and I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I go ahead and go here? So we can go ahead." And he was like, "Sure." And I'm like, "Thank you, sir." But I was all like, "You're a bleep hole," because he was pulling the thing. I could have just been like, "Hmm, I wonder what is going on in this guy's life that he feels the need to cut in front of everybody else, right? Like, he looks like he's okay. He's
Mhm.
smiling and he's happy, but maybe there's something I don't know about. Or maybe he's just walking around in a bubble. I don't know. But just that just is a little more soothing than me being like getting the elbows up, which yeah, yeah,
Curiosity.
yeah. Okay. Curiosity. All right. So I feel like we did cognitive dissonance a good service here. We had it was a
Do
good
you feel
conversation.
lighter?
I do feel lighter, feel
Yeah.
therapeutic. And I'm gonna somehow find out a way to capture one of those last two and put it on my phone. What I have on my phone now is you only get one spin, which I think is a great mantra to live life by. But I really think in this day and age, I may um, capture one of these other ones. I'm not going to use practice structured information consumption. Doesn't really doesn't really motivate me.
Didn't quite
Uh,
roll off the tongue.
but some of that is just like find the joy, find the curiosity. That's a good reminder. So, all right, should we wrap it? Thank you, as always, Des. Always therapeutic. Always helping me remember, like, not as bad as I think it is. Or maybe it is. And welcome to the shit. It's one of the two, but thank you for
Welcome
that.
to the dollhouse, Chris.
Thank you for that.
I love that movie.
And thank you all so much for joining us. We hope this helped you cope and helped me cope. So maybe as a little add-on, it helped you all cope too with this crazy ass world we're living in. Please like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Spotify, I guess. Are we off Spotify still? Are you off Spotify?
I am off Spotify officially.
So screw Spotify, just on iTunes. But that helps ensure that more people can hear us. Give us a 5 stars because that pushes us up. Visit www.bearing287.com or follow me on Substack to access other helpful content from our network. And I am Chris Devolo on behalf of I'm not even supposed to be here and Bearing 287. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.